The Topeka City Council meeting will come to order. Please rise as you are able. Give your attention to Councilman Emerson for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Please pray with me. Our Father in heaven, we just come before you humbly tonight and just ask your blessing on everyone here in these proceedings. Father, where we disagree, I just ask that you help us to do so respectful of each other and with love in our hearts. And Father, as we come to this season where we celebrate your Son's birth, I just ask that you help us to reconcile, Father, where we may have any issues with our fellow brother or sister. And Father, I just pray that we all remember the less fortunate at this time of year, Father, and that you show us how we can serve them, Father, and love them. So in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a proclamation tonight. Testing. There we go. We have a proclamation tonight. Joining me here is Luca Wang of the Communications Coordinator of the Kansas Coalition Against Sexual and Domestic Violence, and then two people from the YWCA, Emily Steimel and Michelle McCormick, who work in the Center for Safety and Empowerment. We have a proclamation on a very serious subject, and particularly for any time of the year, but at this time of the year. And that has to do with stalking. Whereas stalking is an intentional harassment, a pattern of behavior directed at a specific person, causing that person to feel fear and endangerment or endangerment of the person's immediate family. Whereas 165 people who identified stalking as their primary victimization in 2016 were provided services by the YWCA Center for Safety and Empowerment, including counseling and group support, crisis hotline, information and referrals, criminal justice advocacy, protection orders, and immediate medical help and safety planning. Whereas the Kansas Bureau of Investigation reports that 616 protection from stalking orders were filed in Shawnee County in 2016. That's 10% of all orders ordered in the state of Kansas. Whereas the statistics do not represent the true incidence and prevalence of stalking for multiple reasons, including not all victims report the crime to law enforcement. And whereas the Kansas Coalition Against Sexual and Domestic Violence is a statewide organization working to end stalking, it is located in Topeka and wishes to educate and raise awareness about stalking. So now, therefore, I, Larry Wolgass, Mayor of the City, do hereby proclaim the month of January 2018 as Stalking Awareness Month. And Linda, would you tell us a little bit about the programs that you'll be doing in January?
Sure. Yeah, we're going to be educating and increasing awareness about stalking and providing people with facts about stalking, KCSDV, which is the Kansas Coalition Against Sexual and Domestic Violence, and KCSDV as a coalition, and that includes 27 KCSDV coalition member organizations across the state of Kansas that were mentioned in the proclamation, and YWCA CSE, Center for Safety and Empowerment in Topeka, is one of them. So specifically for Topeka, those are the statistics that we used. And do you guys want to say anything else about that? Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Now, we do have presentations, if the city manager would introduce our first one.
Thank you. I'd like to invite first, have Jason Peak come forward, our Public Works Director, and provide an update, a very positive update relative to accomplishments that we made this quarter relative to construction projects.
Good evening, governing body. As city manager said, I'm here to give you an update. This is what we call our third quarter report, but we're actually going to talk a little bit about what we've accomplished through December with a lot of our street projects. So the first slide I'd like to share with you that out of the 22 active major construction projects we had around town in 2017, 19 of those were completed. And what I think is even more astounding is it's easy during the course of the construction that's going on to kind of get focused on some of the project issues. We had delays with the construction, but if you take a step back and kind of look at the bigger picture of our project delivery, I have a chart here in front of you kind of comparing 2016 to 2017. And these are the active major street construction projects. We had 21 in 2016, 22 last year. Of those in 2016, we had 13 that were completed. As I said, this year we have 19. And so in 2016, we had 8 major projects carry over into a second season of construction. This year, we only have 3. And so I think this is just continued performance of the department and the things we're kind of putting in place to be better on time with our project delivery. So just kind of what those 3 that are carrying forward, North Kansas Avenue, this is up in Nodo. It's a project we had unforeseen conditions. We exposed the pavement, found some old pipe under the ground that wasn't known that has to be replaced, and part of that crosses under the Union Pacific rail line, so we've got to coordinate that construction, and so we're still working through those details to get a schedule for 2018. Southwest Wanamaker 4th to 10th, what's really remaining with that project is the intersection at 10th and Wanamaker. We have 3 more quadrants that we still need to get done. And that project, one of the primary issues is we added additional phasing to that. When we started that project early on, there was a lot of kind of concern from the businesses about the travel restrictions at that intersection. So we adapted that project and basically extended the phasing, and that's what caused that to push on. Southwest 6th Avenue, Gage to Fairlawn, we've had a number of issues with that project, but we did get the base paving, so we do have a paved surface for local access. We're continuing to get the curb work and things completed, and that overall project to Fairlawn will be extended through 2018. And then we've also had this fall a number of public meetings about the upcoming projects. You can see some of these major projects that we've got coming on. We've had a lot of good attendance at those meetings, and I think they've been well received. And so now I'd like to just kind of do some before and after photos to kind of share with you, celebrate the success. I think the orange cones have kind of been harvested for the season, so we're going to put them away and we'll get them back out next year. But here's Southeast California, kind of a before and after, looking at the intersection of 37th. Really great project there. Southeast Fremont Street. This was one we actually did a ribbon cutting on a couple of weeks ago, and I mean, you can see what a dramatic change that project's had there. Southwest 10th Avenue, there south of the zoo, that's been a transformative project to that corridor as well, and reflects our complete streets with the multi-use path that was installed along that. And then Southwest Wanamaker and Southwest 21st Street. This is what it probably felt like during construction out there. And, give our contractor Bettis Asphalt together. They really put an extraordinary effort in getting that done and open before Black Friday, and that's kind of what it looked like at that time. Another kind of first for us was our Brick Street reconstruction project, where we had, about 90% of the bricks were recycled from the existing brick pavement out on Southwest Clay Street, kind of before and after, and I know the neighborhood's been really happy with that. And then the last piece is continuing to share kind of our financial information. So this is looking through the third quarter, should be September 30th up there. But basically just to show that we did get the majority of the funds encumbered or expensed through that third quarter. And of course, You'll see a different picture as we get into the fourth quarter and have those wrapped up expenses. And then the last thing I'd just say is that, you can see based on this chart, the citywide half-cent sales tax has been the primary driver funding source for these street projects, and I will be coming back to you in 2018 to talk about that tax sunsets in 2019 and need to talk about renewal of that. And with that, I'll stand for any questions or pass it on to Braxton.
Well, I think that one of the best points you make is the project delivery performance, because I think we hear, first everyone wants the streets fixed, but we don't want the construction, we have to drive around. But to see so many of the projects completed is fantastic compared to previous years. So we thank you, the department and contractors and everyone for helping to finish projects on time as much as they can. Other questions? Discussion?
I got one.
Deputy Mayor Cohen.
That Clay Street, isn't that the one that was just like driving on the moon? It was just literally that bad?
It is definitely one of those streets that was had a lot of chuck holes from the asphalt over the brick.
Do we have plans of recycling some of the brick streets and doing that again?
So we've got a couple of different things. This was a reconstruct. We also did a pilot project on another street where we peeled off the asphalt and just back to the existing brick. We're going to see how that holds over the winter, and that may be a less costly strategy for us to employ on other streets in those neighborhoods.
Seeing no other questions, thank you. Thank you. Then we'll.
And at this time also, we'll invite Braxton Copley, Deputy Utilities Director, forward to present on our utilities third quarter report.
Good evening, Council. Pleasure to be here and showcase a couple of our exciting utilities projects. Our asset management team is small but mighty. There are 5 of us, and currently we have 88 projects, either from preliminary design all the way through construction closeout. I just want to highlight a few. We have an awesome water line project, and this is for our transmission main. This is going from 37th and Fairlawn over to 41st and Wanamaker. This is an 18-inch ductile iron pipe, so big pipe to push a lot of water. This is providing us a redundant means of getting water from our pump station at 37th and Fairlawn over into the west zone, particularly the south part of that west zone has a 500,000-gallon tower. It's the Sherwood Tower. And our operators during the summer at 4 o'clock in the morning can watch the tower level start to go down as we're pushing water out to the rural water district, and everyone's engaging their lawn sprinkler systems. So we definitely need to have this additional means of getting water to push it over to that zone to keep water in that zone and in that tower. Here is the couple of shots of the construction. You can see the blue wrapping around that pipe. That's our poly wrap that goes around that ductile iron pipe. It helps to protect it from our hot corrosive soils, the heavy clay soils that we have. You also see that blue poly wrap going along the hydrant leg and then up the hydrant riser. As with all of our projects, they are pushed out every day to the city's portal. It's part of our transparency in government. As you can see, this project is well under construction. In fact, we've got just about all that pipe laid. It's 2 miles of pipe, and we are on track and on budget on that transmission main extension. We've got a number of projects in design, and one that I want to just highlight is the 2nd Street project. Currently, there's a 2-inch cast iron water line that runs along 2nd from Croco to Rice. A 2-inch water line will not support a fire flow. You need a minimum of a 6. We've had red water complaints along there. We also have had a number of breaks on that line. We recognize that having a huge food processing plant out at the intersection of 6th and Croco put us at a little bit of a risk, because if we had a break on the water line on 6th, we wouldn't be able to push water through that 2-inch line around to get down to keep that business going. So we're replacing this with an 8. It will give us a loop system. So if we have a break anywhere along there, we'll still be able to get water over to a large industrial user at a new facility. Stormwater projects. One I want to focus on is the Bridlewood Drainage Correction Program. Not a lot of people know about our DCP or Drainage Correction Program, so I just wanted to take a second to make you guys aware of that. It's a program designed to help solve localized flooding problems. And basically, to be eligible for the DCP, it has to be a project of estimated under $100,000. It has to affect 3 or more property owners, and the property owners have to agree to donate the easement to us. This particular project was in an existing utility easement, and it was very tight. Bridlewood Townhomes is basically south of 29th Street, and they were getting a lot of runoff from all the impervious surface on the commercial businesses along 29th. So that's the genesis of this. You can see the picture on the left is a couple of structures that we added for collection, and then you see that black corrugated pipe. That's high-density polyethylene. It's 30 inches to help convey that water. The picture on the right is the finished one with the riprap around there to help prevent erosion. As mentioned before, all of the projects are pushed out to the portal. You can see this one is actually complete. We have final completion. I'm just waiting to get the as-built plans, and so then we can officially close this one all the way out. This one was on time and on budget. Wastewater projects under construction. One I'm going to highlight is SCADA. This is kind of the unsung hero. SCADA is supervisory control and data acquisition. In English, that means that it's remote control and remote monitoring. We have SCADA throughout our entire utility system. The project that we're doing right now is at the Oakland plant. We're replacing the controllers, and we're also replacing the fiber cable. And we're doing this in preparation. First, we were at the end of the useful life, and also we've got a couple of big projects that are coming up, and so we are making sure that we have capacity so that we'll be able to plug those projects in when we get to constructing them. Design, we have a number of big projects in design. The one I'm going to focus on is our aerator and mixer replacement. Basically, at Oakland, we have biological treatment. The aeration basin, think of it as long concrete channels. And in those, you see the picture on the right, that's what our new mixers are going to look like. The existing ones are at the end of their useful life. We've had problems with the shafts actually breaking and the mixers falling down into the bottom. And what these large mixers do is they entrain oxygen into that waste slurry, and what that does is it allows for the removal of the biodegradable organics. Again, we're pushing out to the portal every day, and I'll just wrap it up by saying that of our 2017 CIP, we've got basically $51 million budgeted. We have $15 million that's currently spent or encumbered, leaving us $36 million. And with that, I will gladly stand for any questions.
Other questions, comments? Seeing none, thank you. Thank you very much for the excellent presentation, bringing us up to date on this. Next item now, we will go to roll call.
Mayor Wolgath.
Here.
Council members Hiller. Here. Clear. Here. Ortiz. Here. Emerson.
Here.
De La Isla. Here. Jensen.
Present.
Schwartz. Here. Cohen.
Here.
And Harmon.
And Councilman Harmon could not be here due to some business engagements he has. Next, there are no additions or deletions. There will be 2 short executive sessions at the conclusion of the meeting. We then go to appointments.
A is a board appointment recommending the appointment of Caleb Asher to the Downtown Business Improvement District Advisory Board to fill an unexpired term ending January 2, 2020. B is a board appointment recommending the appointment of Leo S. Martinez to the City of Topeka Board of Electrical Appeals for a term ending December 20, 2019. C is a board appointment recommending the appointment of Ashley Canis to the Topeka Human Relations Commission to fill an unexpired term and fill a term expiring July 7, 2020. D is a board appointment recommending the appointment of Walt Frederick to the Civil Service Commission to fill an unexpired term ending January 5, 2020. E is a board appointment recommending the appointment of Stephanie Casson to the Topeka Tourism Business Improvement District Advisory Board for an unexpired term ending January 1, 2019. F is a board appointment recommending the appointment of Lisa Morgan to the Topeka Tourism Business Improvement District Advisory Board for an unexpired term ending January 1, 2019. G is a board appointment recommending the appointment of Vince Fry to the Topeka Tourism Business Improvement District Advisory Board for an unexpired term ending January 1, 2019. H is a board appointment recommending the appointment of Kurt Kian to the Topeka Tourism Business Improvement District Advisory Board for an unexpired term ending January 1, 2020. I is a board appointment recommending the appointment of Robert Bergquist to the Topeka Tourism Business Improvement District Advisory Board for an unexpired term ending January 1, 2020. J is a board appointment recommending the appointment of Thad Halstead to the Topeka Tourism Business Improvement District Advisory Board for an unexpired term ending January 1, 2020. And K is a board appointment recommending the appointment of Dean Patel to the Topeka Tourism Business Improvement District Advisory Board for an unexpired term ending January 1, 2020.
Okay, I believe that's a record. We are trying to fill all the positions that we can before the end of the year, because many of these end the end of the year, and that is the appointments and your pleasure.
I'll move to
Deputy
approve.
Mayor Cohen moves to approve, and Councilwoman Hiller seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor vote yes, opposed vote no.
We have 8 yes.
8 having voted yes, the appointments are approved. And believe me, I'd like to introduce you. They are almost all here tonight. So first, Caleb Asher, if you would just stand, we'll hold applause to the end. To the Downtown Business Improvement District, Leo Martinez, to the City Topeka Board of Electrical Appeals, Ashley Canas, to the Human Relations Commission, Walt Frederick, to the Civil Service Commission. And now the rest, we have 7 appointees. As you know, we passed legislation to create the Topeka Business Improvement District. So the 7 appointees, they are nominated by the hoteliers that was set up, and now the appointments are before us, and they take office then at the beginning of the year. And with those, we have Stephanie Gasson, Linda Morgan, I don't know if she's here, Vince Fry, Kurt Young, I didn't see, Robert Bergquist, Thad Halstead, and Dean Patel. Okay, these are your appointees. Thank you very much for your service. Thank you. Next item is the consent agenda.
Okay, our minutes of the regular meeting of December 12, 2017, and there's a list of applications for cereal malt beverage and dance hall license. Staff is recommending approval.
Okay, that is the consent agenda, and your pleasure. Councilwoman Schwartz moves to approve. Councilwoman Claire seconds. No discussion. All those in favor vote yes. Opposed vote no.
We have 9 yes.
9 having voted yes, the consent agenda is approved. We go to the action items. First is a security guard appeal. If the clerk would read. If the clerk would read.
A security guard license appeal submitted by Marcus Freeman.
Mr. City Manager.
Thank you. Police Legal Advisor Luther Gianni will present information prior to consideration of the appeal of the security guard license application.
Okay. Mr. Gunagaray. And
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this is the appeal at the request of Mr. Freeman of the police department's denial of a renewal for his security guard license. Mr. Freeman has had a security guard license for a number of years, I believe maybe going back to 2008. That license expires every year. He has to renew his license. This year, the department made the decision to deny his renewal, and that was based on some reasons that I'll go into in just a minute. The main reason the license was denied was based on when we do a renewal or even for a new license application, one of the things the department does is run a background check on the applicant. When we did this for Mr. Freeman, we discovered that he had been convicted back this fall in Topeka Municipal Court. The conviction was for unlawful discharge of a firearm. That was a case that was reported to the police the Topeka Police Department. And looking at the record of his case, he was given a citation by a police officer, appeared in municipal court, where he was advised of his rights. He entered a no contest plea and was found guilty by the court and sentenced. I think he was given a fine. The reason the application was denied is because that crime involves a firearm. And under our licensing ordinance, that's one of the types of crimes that we consider is any type of crime committed within the past 10 years involving the use of a firearm. Obviously, he was using a firearm. He was convicted of discharging a firearm within the city limits. As far as the facts surrounding that incident, I've got a couple of paragraphs of factual basis. I'll just give you our version of what happened. I believe Mr. Freeman is here. He will give you information as well. This was on August 20th of this year at approximately 10:16 p.m. The police department responded to a residence at 3330 Southwest Watson Avenue in response to several calls being made to dispatch about a domestic disturbance and multiple gunshots. When the officers arrived, they spoke with some witnesses and located a red Ford F-150 pickup truck parked in the street in front of the residence. The truck was driven by an individual named Jose Villanueva, who stated that he had gone to the residence to speak to his ex-wife. He had knocked on the door, but received no answer, and then returned to his truck. He stated at that time Marcus Freeman then came out of the house. Marcus is the son of his ex-wife. He came out of the house and told Villanueva to leave, and then produced a .45 caliber handgun and fired 2 or 3 shots into the ground. Villanueva then told the police that Freeman had walked away, got into his car, and drove away. Villanueva himself remained at the scene until officers arrived. Police searched Villanueva and his truck, finding no firearms. They did find 2 spent .45 caliber shell casings in the street and a 3rd unfired .45 caliber round near the truck. While they were speaking to him, Mr. Freeman then walked into the yard of the residence and was questioned by police. He had a .380 caliber handgun in his pocket, and that was noted by the police to be a different caliber than the gun that was, the casings were located. Upon making contact with Mr. Freeman, they advised him of his Miranda warning. He agreed to answer questions from the police, stated that Villanueva had come over to the house and he had been known to cause problems in the past, and he went out tonight to tell him to leave. He admitted taking his .45 caliber handgun with him when he went outside, told Villanueva to leave. Villanueva refused to leave. Freeman stated that he then attempted to rack the firearm, causing a misfire into the ground. He stated that he attempted to release the hammer on the gun and caused 2 more misfires. He then walked away, drove his car around the block, and was charged with the reckless discharge of a firearm by the police after they located the .45 caliber handgun in the back seat of his floorboard of his vehicle. So, in looking at this conviction and the facts of the case, the department made the decision to deny his license renewal based on this crime of discharging a firearm and the use of a firearm.
Are
Do you
there
have any questions?
Are there questions for Mr. Conagare from his position? Seeing none, thank you. Mr. Freeman, do you wish to address the council?
Basically, everything is true except I was in the house at my mom's, and my brother's girlfriend had gone outside to smoke a cigarette, and she came back in and she said, "Who drives a red pickup?" And my father and I both looked at each other and we said, "Jose." Now, Jose has been known to come by late at night, intoxicated, belligerent. He's come by with a bike chain. ready to swing at anybody that gets in his way. He came up to the door, and we didn't want him coming in because we didn't know what he was going to do. Like I said, anytime he's ever by this late at night, he's almost always drunk. So we shut all the lights off. We turned all the TVs off, locked the door. We didn't want him coming in the house. We didn't know why he was there. And so he starts pounding on the door, and we thought, we'll just keep quiet and hopefully he'll go away. So eventually he's not going away, and he decides that he's going to go around the side of the house, and he starts to bang on my mother's bedroom window. My mother is not in the room, however, my niece is, and my niece is a kidnap and 3-time rape victim. So she's in the bedroom trying to go to sleep because she has school in the morning, and he decides he's going to knock on the window. So at that point, I decided I was going to try and put an end to this. So I went around the back of the house so he couldn't get in the front. And as I'm going out the door, my sister says, "Take my gun so that you can get to yours." My gun was not on me, it was in my car. So I put her gun in my pocket, and I made my way around the back side of the house. It was a 38 Bertha Thunder. It's a small caliber gun. I'm not real comfortable with that. I was more comfortable with my weapon. So I tried to make my way around the house to go to get my gun. And as I'm getting up towards the side of the house, it's becoming more apparent that he's just going to leave. So I was not going to confront him. As I'm getting ready to go back in the house, he pulls up the street. He goes north up the street and then makes a left. And then I think at that point, he just decided he was going to start again. So he comes back around, speeds back down the street, and stops in front of the house. So at that point, I decided to follow through with what I initially was going to try and do. And I made my way to my car, got my pistol out of my car, and held my gun in front of my body like this, finger off the trigger. Off the trigger. I was not pulling the trigger. I held it in front of me, and I told Jose that he needed to leave because he was not doing good with this family. He would not listen to me. At that point, I told him, I think 2 more times that he needed to leave because he's always doing stuff like this, and these kids don't need this. So again, he tells me he's not going to leave. So then it looked like he was going to reach for something in the truck. So at that point, I did rack my slide like this, finger still off the trigger. I racked my slide, and I let the slide forward to chamber the round. That's all I was doing. And in doing so, I don't know what happened, but somehow the slide falling forward made the hammer fall, and it fired the round into the street between my feet. If I had had it maybe an inch or 2 closer to my body, I would have been shot in the stomach. I was not trying to do anything malicious. I was just trying to protect my family. I feared for our lives because he's done this thing before. And I feel like if I had just left and not come back, I wouldn't be in this situation right now. I did leave, but it was not to avoid the cops. It was to try and make him think that he was going to be in trouble if he stayed there. And I went around the block to come back into the house and come out the front when I noticed that police were showing up. I did not want to be there in the vicinity of police showing up because I was worried that they would think I was a threat. So my gun was already in the car because what I had done when when the misfire happened was I held it out like this to release the hammer and not fire anymore, and it fired 2 more times. This was not my doing. I didn't have my finger on the trigger to fire it. If I was trying to intimidate him, I don't know what I would have done intentionally. But this was not what I was doing. I was trying to disarm my weapon so nobody got hurt.
Okay.
That's all.
How long have you had a security guard license?
I've been a security guard for 9 years.
Have you had any other infractions
No, I have not.
in any of your renewals? Okay.
I've had a couple of hiccups here and there if I had forgotten and let it lapse, but I had paid the fines. I had gone through what I needed to do to be able to renew it. Never had a problem. I never had any legal problems that would have led to me losing my license,
Okay.
and now I can't work.
Okay, thank you. Questions, discussion? Councilwoman Claire?
In your letter to the city clerk, you said the slide, after the slide and fired a round between my feet. However, so that's a round. But we heard that there were 3 rounds. So was it 1 round or was it 3 rounds?
It was 3 rounds. I might have unintentionally left it out of my statement, but yes, it was 3 rounds.
Okay, but-
1 initial misfire and then 2 when I was trying to release the hammer.
Well, I
And
have
at
a
that point, I held the slide back, emptied the chamber, pulled the magazine out, and made sure the weapon was clear and put it away.
Well, I have a couple of concerns. One, you're a security officer and you have 3 misfired.
I'm not armed.
Or whatever.
I'm not an armed guard.
You're not an armed guard?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Why did you plead guilty? Why?
Because I felt that that was the only way that I was going to get past this. I didn't have a way to hire an attorney to defend me, and I don't feel like I'm very eloquent in speaking publicly, so I felt that I didn't have any other choice, but now here I am because I can't get my license, and I didn't know that this was going to impede me getting my license.
So you can get it expunged, though? You could go back and get it expunged?
That's what I was hoping to do, yes.
Councilwoman Hiller?
Thank you, Mayor. What she asked was pretty much what I wondered. I did read through your materials as
Yes, ma'am.
well. We aren't the expunging agency,
No,
though.
I know.
We are just the appeal for the license. And I wonder, I mean, back to your case, I guess we can ask Luther about the expungement, whether the expungement would have made a difference in this case, because I know we changed some of those statutes. But for you, while you're here, did you have time to ask the judge for those things, or did you just kind of let the case roll? How did the case go?
Basically, it was showing up here, and I just couldn't escape this fact that I was probably going to get found guilty either way, so I just pled no contest, and that's how it played out. I didn't think that I was going to be able to show up to defend myself in court, just because, you know, I'm working 2 jobs, and I don't want to lose the other one too. So.
Thank you.
Councilman Jensen?
First of all, thank you very much for coming to speak to us this evening. I know it's incredibly difficult when you're fighting for your job and your livelihood, so I appreciate it and respect your decision to come and appeal this. Can I ask a couple of questions to Luther?
Okay. Is there any other questions for Mr. Freeman? Councilwoman Delisla?
Mr. Freeman, thank you so much for coming over here. I do have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
At which point in time, when the family felt in danger, was the TPD called rather than the family trying to mitigate it on their own?
I don't know. You mean in this particular incident?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It was other people in the neighborhood that called. I don't know when they actually did it. But it was, I'd say it was probably, I don't even know what time the whole thing happened. It was just, it's a big blur, but I couldn't tell you. I don't know.
It's, you said that there was a history of these incidents.
Oh,
so-
you mean
So I'm, no,
how often?
no, but my question is, at that point in time, you're saying that you don't recall calling the TPD. My question is, have you called sheriffs or TPD when you've had this instance happen
Yes.
before?
Yes, we have. We've called the police on him many times, and anytime we do, they never do anything about it. They say, oh, well, there's nothing we can do. He's not doing anything wrong. So we don't call the police anymore.
Thank you.
Yes.
Are there other questions for Mr. Freeman? If not, thank you.
Thank you.
And Mr. Gonagray, I think we have questions for you from Councilman Jensen. Gonagray.
Anya.
Sorry, I mispronounced your name. Councilman Jensen.
Thank you. So 2 questions. First of all, if this had been expunged, would that have changed the outcome of the decision? And second of all, could you define lawful defense for us and explain why in this circumstance that was not the case?
Sure. I'm not sure your first question, if you're talking about an expungement or a diversion.
Well, whichever would have been available to him. I'm not an attorney, so I don't quite know the difference, but whichever would have been available to him through municipal court, had he had the ability to apply for that and been granted, would that have changed the outcome of his attempt to renew his license?
Yes. Under the recent revisions that we've done to the security guard factors that we look at in the definition of a conviction, we do not consider diversions. When he appeared in municipal court, he could have requested a diversion at that time. Just kind of generally the way municipal court process works is the judge will advise people of their rights, whether the presumption of innocence and the right to have a trial. They have the ability then to request diversion consideration through the prosecutor's office, and that can either be approved or denied, just depending on the person's record. And then they're asked to enter a plea, I think guilty, no contest, or not guilty, and have a trial. Mr. Freeman chose no contest. Then the judge, at the end of that process, advises defendants of their right to seek an expungement. Expungements happen in the future. In this case, because of the type of offense it is, the minimum amount he would have to wait would be the 3-year period in order to qualify for expungement.
So if first of all, is this a divertible offense, or do you know?
It could be. The decision to offer a diversion is based on several different factors. The type of offense is just one of them. It's also based on his history in municipal court, his criminal record, whether he's got outstanding fines on other cases,
Sure.
whether he's ever failed to appear on this case, things of that nature.
Excellent. Well,
Okay,
my
thank
second
you.
question then is, could you explain why this wasn't lawful defense?
Sure.
I know it's kind of a trick question. I apologize.
The statutory part of this offense is what's prohibited is the reckless discharge of a firearm.
Right, but
And then
that
it
is
goes on-
excluded if it's for lawful defense.
Right, that's what I was getting to, is there's a built-in defense to this for purposes of self-defense.
Well, this also says the firearm is discharged in the lawful defense of one's person, another person's, or one's property.
Sure, right. I'm using self-defense in a broader category of yourself, another person, or your property. At any rate, Mr. Freeman could have potentially made a self-defense argument in his court proceeding. However, by not making that argument and pleading no contest, he never made that argument. So self-defense or defense of property or others, it's a defense to a charge, but you have to make the defense.
Sure.
So that's why it didn't apply.
Okay, are there other questions?
Can I ask one quick follow-up?
Sure,
So
okay.
is there a way for us to grant sort of a provisional approval for that, provided he goes back and gets this diverted? Is that even a possibility from anybody? Or do we just have to override it?
Well, I think at this point, the conviction has become final. He's not,
So there's no way to
he's
go
not
back
within
and
his
undo
appeal time for
Right.
the municipal court case, and it is a final conviction.
Okay. So he has 10 years of having to come back and plead his case to every council.
Right, yes, sir. One thing, if I could, just add to that, had Mr. Freeman made a self-defense argument, there would be a counter-argument from the prosecution.
Sure.
Mr. Villanueva was sitting in his truck. He knocked on somebody's door. He did not have a weapon.
Sure.
You know, so there's a counter-argument to the self-defense that ultimately a judge is going to have to
There's two sides to
decide.
every story, absolutely.
Sure.
All right, other questions? Okay, seeing none. Council, we have before us the issue of approval of the denial of the appeal. Deputy Mayor Cohen.
I'll make a motion that we accept the police's denial request.
All right, so that is a motion to accept, or we will be approving the denial of the license. Councilwoman Claire seconds. Any discussion? Councilwoman Hiller?
We've asked some specific questions of Luther, but maybe if I could just ask an open-ended question. I'm not real comfortable being, setting ourselves in the position of being the judge in this case, but I'm very sensitive to when people don't have money and go represent themselves and don't know the things to say and so on. Is there, and this would be a question for Mr. Gagne, is there any way then that this could be resolved at the court level? Sort of like we remand things back to the Planning Commission, and I heard what you said earlier, I'm just open-ended. Is there any way that this can be addressed by the court?
Not at this point, council member. His court case has been concluded. He has an appeal time where he could ask for a new trial, new proceedings, start over again in district court, but that time ran. This conviction was done in September. So he's beyond that period of time, and the conviction's final. There's really nothing that can be done about it at this time.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second before us. Just to be, and again, to be clear, a yes vote will be up to deny, will be approving the denial. Okay, we're all together on that? Yes, and the no vote would be to not approve the denial.
So you realize that means for the next 10 years, you're going to have to come back every single year and plead your case to the council that changes on a regular basis. Is that, do you really want to do that to try and keep this job?
I don't really want to, but I don't know. Like I said, I feel like if I had just left the scene and drove away, none of this would be a problem.
Okay.
It's you hear about these people shooting guns off in Topeka all the time, and nobody gets in trouble for it because they're not around. I try to stick around and do things the legal way, and this happens.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, Councilman Hiller?
One more question, because I know that we have a responsibility to be consistent, and so if we were to override this denial, are there risks for us as a council or the city?
I think City Attorney, would you want to weigh in on this?
I think that we've talked about that before, and I think that you have the right and the authority under this ordinance to overturn the recommendation of the TPD. So if you believe you have valid reasons to do it, you can do that.
So we view, in a sense, each one individually, I think, rather
Absolutely.
than setting
You do.
a trend or a standard.
It's a case-by-case situation.
Okay, any other questions, discussions? We're having Councilman Clear.
I'm going to have to uphold the denial, and I'll tell you what, if you don't know how to use a gun, don't walk out and stand there with the gun in your hand. And if it misfired, then it misfired. You're lucky you weren't aiming it like this and it happened to misfire.
Yes, ma'am. That's
So-
exactly why I had it facing down
But
and
that's
away
good
from
for you,
anybody.
but it's the law.
Also, I did not have my finger on the trigger. I want to make that very clear. I did not have my finger on the trigger, and I do know how to use a weapon.
So I just have to uphold
Okay.
the law.
Councilman Emerson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of the first meetings I came to, we were upholding a denial of a license, and I was pretty outraged because in that case, it was a person, I'm probably not going to remember the facts correctly here, but it was something like the person had had a DUI in Osage County like 8 years before, and they forgot to put it down. And I'm sorry, to me, this is a much bigger oversight. In the statement, sorry, Mr. Freeman, in your statement, you said you omitted that it fired 3 times. And
Yes, sir.
I can kind of, sorry, but I can believe something can misfire times, but 3 shots is a lot of misfire.
understand, yes.
And you omitted that in your statement, so I'm sorry, but I'm going to vote to uphold.
Thank you, sir.
Deputy Mayor Cohen?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just curious, how many times has a council overturned something like that? Just curious. I mean, has it ever happened in recent memory?
I don't recall how many times you all have done that. In my 2 years, you've probably only considered a half a dozen
we
at
have.
most. I
Maybe
think
like
yep,
once or
those are-
twice
Yeah.
in 8 years
Yeah, and those old timers.
of
A few,
all.
yeah. There've been, I remember of several, yeah.
Deputy Mayor, Luther indicates once in 3 years. correct? One overturned in 3 years.
Okay, and we've had some before that, but not many. Other discussion? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Vote yes means that you are approving the denial. Vote yes and vote no means you disagree.
Okay, we have 7 yes, Ms. Ortiz abstaining, and the mayor voting no.
7 having voted yes, the denial is approved. Thank you for coming here. Go to item B, an ordinance. The clerk would read. Okay. I'm all alone.
B is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Brent Trout concerning franchise fees for ambulance service, amending City of Topeka Code Section 510040 and repealing the original section.
Mr. City Manager.
Fire Chief Duke presented last meeting regarding the change to the franchise fees. If there are any questions, we'll answer them at this point.
Are there any questions on this issue? We had it presented for discussion last week. Seeing none, we do have a person signed to speak on this issue, David Price. Mr. Price here? Mr. Price. I thought I saw him, but I don't see him now. Okay. Mr. Price not being here, then our public comment is complete. Council, your action? Councilwoman DeLisa has moved to approve the ambulance service franchise fees. Councilman Jensen seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor vote yes, opposed vote no.
We have 9 yes.
9 having voted yes, the ordinance is approved. Go to item C, an ordinance.
C is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Brent Trout providing for a non-exclusive franchise to American Medical Response to operate an ambulance service within the City of Topeka, which replaces the franchise ordinance codified at City Code Appendix B, Article 6, that will expire December 31, 2017.
Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. This item relates to item 6B, but it actually, what we're looking at doing here is approving the franchise for 2 years. In the past, we've only approved it for 1 year.
Is there any discussion? Your pleasure. Councilwoman DeLisa moves to approve. Councilman Jensen seconds. Is there, any discussion? All those in favor vote yes, opposed vote no.
We have 9 yes.
9 having voted yes, the ordinance is approved. Mr. Price? We handled that particular item already. Would you like to make a comment on it? Okay, if you we can take the stand.
I hate to be the bearer of bad news. My name is David Martin Price, President of IFFOC, Independent Federal Fund Oversight Committee. After reviewing the itemized agenda to increase franchise fees for ambulance fees, I will strongly issue a category notice of warning to the city of Topeka, Kansas for the following reasons. I'd also like to state for the record, I admire and respect the ambulance service for all that they do, but this is warning the city of Topeka is overreaching on this issue. I would strongly recommend proper review with caution. I'd also request you hold questions after I'm finished, but if you insist, I would request you stop the time clock during the question. Pursuant to Supreme Court of Iowa case number 060026, Lease of Cranes versus City of Des Moines, Iowa, decision May 26, 2006, the city of Topeka is placing itself at risk for a civil action which is already decided by Iowa Supreme Court. In this action, it specifically states that this is strictly a utility occupancy of a public area, which ambulance fees is a city tax, not a public utility, and which would be a double tax, as well as falls outside the franchise fee charge. As per this case, it would actually fall under property tax or city tax for services. I have the case here if you want to review it. I'll pass it through there.
Okay.
So it says that these are only supposed to be for utility services. The ambulance is not a utility service. This is for like KP&L, gas and light, stuff like that. I just want to make the city of Iowa had to pay back the taxpayers $40 million.
Okay.
I just wanted to bring it to your caution to let you know you might be in an area you need to review.
All right.
And there's the case right there.
Okay, thank
I
you.
want to thank you for your time and inconvenience.
Thank you, and that will be reviewed. We go then to item D, the resolution. The clerk would read.
D is a resolution introduced by City Manager Brent Trout authorizing the use of excess general funds from unreserved fund balances.
Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Governing body. Last week, we had a presentation was made by Nikki Lee, Finance Director, regarding a request for authorization to utilize excess general funds for two purposes: to pay off the lease for the police department vehicles early and to move forward a fire station renovation project from the 2018 budget. Staff is available for questions, and that is our current recommendation on the use of funds.
Okay, are there questions, discussion? Councilwoman DeLisa, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Wolgast. I think that the body knows where I'm going to go with this statement, but I would really urge us to consider the possibility of the Housing Trust Fund for the use of these funds. Not maybe all of them, but maybe if we were able to make a small allocation, even if it's $100,000 out of that, we still would have $100,000 to go to the fire stations. The cars for the police department would be untouched. However, my thought with this is, last year when we were having this discussion, we had some additional funds that were going to be allocated, and we were trying to figure out where those funds were going to go. We decided as a body that we were going to use those funds for the roads. So we do have that road project taken care of. My concern is that we do have a situation with housing, whether it's housing in the sense of code enforcement, that we need additional support. We have a housing stock that is deteriorating because we've had an economic crisis and a bubble hit us, and we're trying to figure out ways to mitigate these issues while the federal government is dwindling in funds for us. That is what we're using right now to mitigate these problems. So my thought is, if we were able to set aside maybe $100,000 this year, $100,000 next year, and work with the community to try to find matching funds at the point in which we would have $500,000 between match, city, and the community, we would then start looking at projects, and we would come up with a coalition and a task force to do, like Councilwoman Hiller had recommended, maybe a housing study, so that we could see how we would make the best use for those funds with the nonprofit organizations that are already doing that work. So that is my request for consideration in this item.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Claire?
I wish we had all the money in the world where we could do this, but I'm afraid we have got to have our priorities. Okay, the priority of the streets, the priority of the water, the priority, I mean, that serves everybody, every single citizen. I think we have to look at these priorities. We can't afford to, I don't think it does any good to give a little bit everywhere, because then they can't do anything with any of it. You know, I think you need to, I'm not saying it's not needed, and I wish that we had enough money to fund everything that we could in the city. But I think we have to set our priorities and not spread the money out to where it's not helping anyone.
Okay, if, my comment is, I appreciate your statement and the direction you're going. And I was wondering if there is, well, we've had the people from the Affordable Housing Task Force and JUMP speak very strongly about the need, and I think we hear that and understanding it. And I'm going to the city manager, is it possible a way that we can show that within there will be some funds, either this is really taking care of some reserves, or what we have, the overreach at the end of the year, so that in 2018, and then when we have a more of a definite plan for its use, how it can be used. And I think the same way, 200,000 isn't much in housing, but it can be used to gain other funds, and it can show the support of the city, so that then there can be other help that can come. Now that's a long question back to you.
Well, with regards to the funding that we have available, there is roughly a little over 200,000 that's projected that won't be used at all, that'll carry over to the balance. But we also know that with the fact that we're moving the fire station renovation project forward into 17, there would be over 300,000 that's freed up by the fact that that's available. So moving and dedicating 200,000 to the Housing Trust Fund, if you want to do that in 18, would be possible. So it is within the realm of possibility to pursue the angle that you're considering.
Councilman Hiller. Jensen.
Thank you, Mayor. I gave it a lot of thought after our conversations last time, and then I inquired with the staff, because I too, as my colleague Councilwoman Clear feels, I think we've got to keep our priorities as a city and what we do as top priority. We were challenged about streets. We made the decision to put 100% of the leftover countywide half-cent sales tax money into streets, roughly $3 million a year over 3 years, because we were advised by our staff with the numbers running that we needed an extra $5 million a year over the citywide half-cent sales tax to just get to a PCI level of 55. And when Councilman Cohen and I asked the staff if they thought they could find the difference, $2 million for 2018, the staff responded positively and did in fact come up with $2 million for 2018. But that was almost all one-time money. It wasn't a change out of the core budget. And we also have learned that the property tax estimates by the county were lower than we thought, and we don't have a lot of extra money coming in. And so I inquired what they were looking at for the $2 million for 2019, if they were seeing any prospects on that, and basically it's pretty fuzzy. He didn't have anything specific, said they were looking again at recalibrating the PCI numbers and so on. But until I've really stuck with not raising property taxes, and I'll continue to do that, particularly in mind that we needed to raise the water fees, which we're going to do tonight probably. And to protect those very folks in affordable housing, we've got to take care of those streets and those neighborhoods. And so I was even thinking about asking to not reprogram the two suggestions. I'm okay with going with those. I also absolutely would like to see this community-wide, us develop a strategy for affordable housing. If there were anything, to come up with funding from somewhere to do that assessment of where we are, what we need, and what sources people are using nationally. We have not done that since the town hall meeting on affordable housing in 1990. My understanding is it would cost only about $30,000 to do that. I also recall in budget time that Neighborhood Relations Department head Hahn told us that they were looking overall at just what we're doing even with our HUD money and neighborhood relations money. And I'm just not ready to set aside any money for a housing trust fund. I don't know that we need it. If the city wants to leverage it, we don't need a board, we don't need a trust fund, we just need to identify some money. We need to know what we would be doing it for, and we're just not there yet. I would like to get there. even within the first 6 months, let's say, of 2018. I've also talked to the jump people time and time again. I think I'm the person who has gone most often from this council.
Now, Karen, don't say you're the only one that's doing it.
I didn't say I was the only one.
That you've done it the most. Now, that's not true.
Well,
I'm going to call
maybe
you on it.
Okay.
Okay?
When we
I talked to them today. I talk to them almost weekly. I've been to their board meetings.
Okay.
So I resent you saying that you're the main one working with them.
I said of the council, and I know that you've worked with them, so my apologies
Okay.
if you took it personally. The point that I wanted to make is that we've talked many times about them doing the research to find private money. I want to see new money in affordable housing, not just converting tax money or converting something else. And they've gotten really close to promising that. I talked to Shanae this week, and I said, I'm sorry, I'm frustrated. Every time we get down to the point, you default back to just wanting property tax money. I want to see us work together and see you all bring all that energy and those ideas forward with some results as well. And once again, we talked that through, and I think we can do that. She's eager to meet. And so I don't know that we make the commitment on how we do affordable housing tonight, but I'd like
Right.
at some point.
Well, I do have to say that we've had an affordable housing task force for a year and a half, and they have had national speakers in. We've had cities from other representatives, primarily from Kansas City, Kansas, come over and give presentations. So to say that the city's done nothing for whatever year you said is not true, because the Department of Neighborhood Relations has been the one that's been doing this, been putting these meetings together, has done a fantastic job. And they have been ready many times to come to the council, but usually then there is a new direction that goes. And generally, what the other cities say, you don't go raise money first. The city has to put some money in to show it is in the ballpark. Then banks and other entities will work with you. But if the city is not going to be in play, there is almost no way to get this started. So we have to be able to do that. At some point, the city has to make a commitment. And in Kansas City, Kansas, they have $250,000, $300,000 a year, and they raise like $10 million. But the city is in it first. And that's why it is so important that we show we're supportive. And you talk about the goals of the cities. Well, one of our 4 goals is quality of place, quality of life. And certainly, I think the council, the city, means to help everyone. And if quality of place is something that's very important. And when we have the number of people in bad housing, it's going to take a city effort to get it started. And they can't just go out and start raising money. They'd raise, what, 2, 3, 4, 10,000 is nothing. You have to get up to $1 million, and with some money in it, then we can go leverage that with banks to put the bank credit money in. That's the way the process starts. So at some point, we have to do that, and maybe not this year, maybe not now, but I certainly encourage the council to consider that for the future.
Thank you, Mayor Wolgass. I think that for us to say that we are not going to be looking at housing is concerning, because in my experience doing low-income housing and working with residents for the past few years, I can tell you that research shows that if you want to end homelessness and inequality, housing first. All programs that you look at talk about housing first. And I understand that maybe setting aside $200,000 is not going to make a meaningful impact today. But I think that if we take the stance that we understand that we have 31% poverty in our city, that we do have issues with housing stock dwindling in not only value, which is any dollars that we put into housing is a reinvestment back in us, because property values go up and we start receiving that money back. But aside from that, if we start thinking on how we protect the most vulnerable in our community, if we start preparing funds so that as the home funds are dwindling, as the federal funds are dwindling, we are providing our housing and neighborhood organization, our neighborhood relations organization, an additional place for them to have a stake right there so that we could start doing grants. We have a grant writer in-house. We have the community that is watching and that is wanting this to happen. But if we don't set that first step, I don't think it's going to happen. And proof of it is that we have been talking about this for a year and a half, trying to figure out how we're going to get those funds, and nothing has happened. So here we had a $500,000 request at first, and I understand. I absolutely support the fact that we went ahead and we did for the roads, because the roads are important. But if our citizens don't have where to live, the roads aren't important at all. So it's not about putting all of our eggs in one basket. It's about figuring out how we use what we have to leverage powerful private-public partnerships. And this is a call not only to the city of Topeka, this is a call to jump. Because I'm saying, I'm willing to go ahead and stick our heads out and say that we want to have the money. But I need all of you to come back to the city and say that you're going to go ahead and do a love offering so that we could keep on building that fund. $200,000 is not going to do anything for us. We need those funds to keep on growing so that we could make some meaningful changes in our city. So I'm not saying this is just going to be a city project. It's a community project, and the city is saying we value our residents enough that we see this as a situation that we see federal money going down, state money going down for housing projects. We want to start a fund where we could grow from. And I appreciate both of your leaderships, because I know that both of you have worked super hard to make sure that we have positive conversations with regards to this issue. But we have the opportunity, these are extra funds, putting an additional $100,000 every year that we could discuss. $100,000 for a budget of $293 million is not that much. And for the impact that it would have on housing for our residents, I think it's something that we should look into.
Councilman Jensen.
Thank you. Can I do a motion to approve and an amendment all at the same time?
Well, I think we need to have a motion. We should have a
Okay,
motion
somebody
for
do a motion to
for the
approve, and I
ordinance,
have
to
an
approve the
amendment then.
ordinance.
Well, I think we'll
I'm
accomplish what
sorry, it's a
everybody's trying to do.
resolution. Deputy Mayor Cohen, to approve the resolution for the general fund transfer, and Councilman Emerson seconds.
Okay, fabulous. So I would amend that we allocate $200,000 as matching funds from the 2018 budget, provided a full and complete housing plan is approved by the council. So that accomplishes essentially what everybody's after. We'll allocate freed money from the 2018 budget that we're going to use these funds for, so that money is not spoken for at this point. We're not going to transfer it to the housing fund or the housing trust fund until we have a plan, which I do agree we need. And that plan does need to be broader than just the housing trust fund. And it's matching money, which calls on Jump and other members of the community to get out there. And this is a community effort, and it is a community problem. I agree with all of your points. So essentially what that means is we're going to get $400,000 in this trust fund, and then we're going to get a full and complete housing plan so we can actually start to address it, what is a very serious issue.
Okay. Is there any problem with us doing 2018, encumbering 2018 funds?
We covered the whole thing.
Good evening. I'm not sure that we have the budget authority in 2018 to do that. I mean, it could come as a budget amendment, or maybe even as part of kind of a resolution similar to the one that we proposed.
It's part of a resolution now, so.
Those are for 2017 funds.
Right.
As part of this resolution.
So we have to have a resolution in 2018 to change the 2018 budget?
I think so.
Yes.
I would think so.
Well, so why don't we just reallocate, or allocate $200,000 out of this money, and then, because this isn't going to get spent this year, and then we can spend $200,000 that's unallocated in next year's budget.
I mean, and I don't have a problem if we approve this as is, and then it's the
Well, but
council
that
in
doesn't solve the
2018.
problem.
Well, I know, but I'm saying in 2018, they
That's
said
what
that
we
there
said we
could
were
be.
gonna do last year.
Wait, excuse me. In 2018, the city manager said there's going to be additional money left over at
Right.
the end of this year.
Okay.
So it isn't really taking money that isn't there.
But that kicks the can down the road another
Well,
entire year.
okay.
Right, well, so I'd like to change my motion to use funds from this excess here then, because otherwise we're just going to kick the can down the road yet another year.
Okay, so Councilman Jensen is moving that we use $200,000 out of these funds here for the affordable housing process. Okay, is there a second for that?
If he could repeat that, because
So-
it was conditional.
So I would allocate $200,000 as matching money out of the 2017 budget excess provided the full and complete housing plan is approved by the council. It's matching funds. So that means they have to raise $200,000. We have to have a full and complete plan before anything happens to it. We're only allocating.
Okay, Councilman DeLeo seconds. Now, City Manager.
I think the thing that we need to look at here is there's an actual formal process you do when you amend the budget. And so that's where we're not at with this as far as an agenda item. So what we're doing is approving a concept tonight. There will need to be another step that's done by the city council in order to actually authorize and move the 200,000. That's what we've been discussing, is there's another step that needs to occur in this process. So you're approving the concept, but not actually allocating the dollars. Is that accurate? Good? No. Okay.
Okay, and is that still with the amendment? Is that still possible with his amendment?
That shows
Okay,
our commitment and starts the process. That's all I can ask for.
Okay, so we agree, we understand what we're doing here. Councilman Hiller, and then...
Question, because the resolution that we have allocates 100% of the money that they've identified, right? So do we have to make if that were passed, would a decision have to be made about what would be
Yeah,
done?
which 200?
Right, exactly.
But the 200,000 he's referring to is out of 2018's budget.
No, they have to come out of this budget because we can't do, correct me if I'm wrong, we can't spend 18 money.
The 200,000 would fall to fund balance, and so next year you would need to amend the budget, which you can do at any point during the year. It's just a formal step that we have to take with submitting it to the state.
Okay, now, again, so we understand. If you don't understand, ask questions about it. I think Councilman Emerson and Clear.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll muddy this already muddy water further.
Jump right in.
I specifically asked the question of Nikki last week, if we could, and mine was more on, if we're, didn't say more on, but mine was more along the lines, excuse me, I was speaking by myself there. You know, we have this last lease payment, and I asked if they're not going to give us a discount, can we at least leave that in the bank? Because it'd give us about $300 interest by waiting until February. Nikki informed me that we actually have to expend the funds this year unless we encumber them to a project. We can encumber the $300,000 towards the fire station project, and that's fine, but we can't have just money floating out here that we're going to, because we're going to spend it in the, and I know, Mr. Gerber, you're very familiar with the budget stuff, so maybe there's some magic you can do, but that was just what she told me. It actually had to be spent or put towards a project. Had to be a project, not a future expense.
Councilman Emerson, Mr. Mayor, if I understand your question, it is the 200,000 that Councilman Jensen is suggesting. So what I'm hearing the body say is that can be rolled over into fund balance, and Nick is correct in saying that then at the end, or at any point next year, those funds can be expended just at some point, probably when we typically would amend the budget, which is usually in December, correct? That's usually when it happens. You would amend that to allow for that additional fund balance to be used. But it could be, if you don't specifically outline it right now, which I think you could also do as part of the resolution, but you could just let it roll over into fund balance and then spend it next year and then amend the budget during our normal process in 2017. That's not magic. I don't do budget magic. It's just, I get nervous when people talk about budget magic. It's just what stuff how we would work it, I think. Does that answer make sense? I don't think it did.
So we can do what he's advocating. We can have this money setting out there unencumbered, just in a balance, and we don't have to do anything with it right now.
That's correct. And then at some point, we'll have to have it in our tickler somehow to remind ourselves that when we amend the budget next year, which likely we'll do, then it'll go as part of that process.
And Mr. Mayor, if I could ask a question of Mr. Jensen. As I understand from your motion, we only spend this provided a plan that we approve is brought forward.
And there's matching funds from the community.
Yeah, or someplace.
Okay.
Right.
Matching funds.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have Councilman Clare.
I heard Councilmember DeLeese said, this is our most vulnerable. But I kind of beg to differ. If we're going to talk about utility rates in a minute, and the people that are on the fixed income, this 200,000 we could put to the utility rates and might be able to help them. I don't know, and because if you don't, and they don't have any money, you're going to have more homelessness. So I think there's an argument to make on who needs it the most. And I still go back to in our fire stations. I don't know if I can, I guess we have to set our own priorities on what we think is important.
Councilman Schwartz.
Thank you. I agree. We have been working on this for at least the last 2 years. And I'm surprised we don't have a whole bunch of yellow shirts in the audience tonight. I'm kind of torn on this whole thing because I don't like the tactics that Jump used. When I first went to their meeting, they put me on the hot seat and they grilled me as they went around. And back then, I even suggested you need to become a diverse, if you're going to have community support, you need to become a diverse group. They are still not a diverse group. And so I'm really torn as to how to vote. Even though this is one of my last votes, I do believe we need housing. I do believe we need to start a trust fund. But I don't really think that we should do it every year with excess funds. I think it needs to be done in the budget. So I'm going to probably be not supporting this because I really feel like we need to do it the right way. And this is not the right way.
Okay. Councilman Jensen.
Thank you, Your Honor. So I do support your opinion and that it needs to be a longer-term deal. And that's why I advocate for not actually moving the money around until we have a plan. All we're doing is allocating what I would consider the startup money. I loved your idea about $1 on the building permits as a long-term funding source.
Yes.
So I think, and that's why the plan is so critical to make this successful. My only other comment, Ms. Claire, I have a suggestion on the water rate utility that I think will help people on fixed income, because you're absolutely right. That is a serious problem. And, if they get 2% a year and we're adding 5%, those numbers don't work. So I have thought about that. When we get there, we'll talk.
Yeah. And actually, that suggestion about adding the $1, there are many cities do all kinds of things like this to get a fund for affordable housing. Councilman DeLisla.
Thank you, Mayor Wolgass. I would just like to say that I know that it's hard and that the taxes were definitely not appreciated. It's really hard to sit up here sometimes and hear, but sadly, we signed up to serve and there was outrage. And I think that our role many times is when we feel the frustration and the anger that our constituents are bringing us. One of the wisest persons I know, Michelle Cole, told me this weekend, you have to put all emotion aside. Because when we're capable of putting emotion aside, we're able to listen to what the real issue is. And I think that at this point in time, I know that we don't have a plan to continue funding it, although the building, the $1 for the building, it's just wonderful. It would be a great thing. But if we don't put a seed forward, then I don't think that this project is ever going to get the traction that we all want to see it take. And I know that right now it's semi-amorphous, but it's the statement of setting aside the funds that we have right now as a carryover so that then we can start developing a plan on how to build it. And that is my just request of all of us, so that we just consider that this is just a seed. It's just seed so that we say that we have the money there to start this with, and that we will then commit that we will work on not only with our community, but we will work within ourselves to figure out a way of ensuring that the money keeps coming into the fund. But I do appreciate the sentiment, because it is hard. It is hard. None of us sign up to serve to do a bad job. We're all human. And it's hard. It's really hard. But this is an issue that I can tell you. This is where I was working. I saw the families. I saw the faces. There's a lot of need. And we need to figure out a way of having additional funds when the federal funding is going down. I don't want us to wait till it's too late, that we're in a pinch and we're trying to figure out where we're going to get money to fund the nonprofit organizations that are funding the underserved.
Okay. Now, we have an amendment. Oh, I'm sorry. Deputy Mayor, okay, we're ready. We have an amendment. And would you please refresh us with the amendment?
Okay, so Mr. Jensen moved, De La Isla seconded. The motion was to amend the resolution to allocate $200,000 as matching funds from the 2017 budget excess funds to affordable housing, provided a full and complete housing plan has been completed.
Okay.
Trust fund,
Funds to,
the Housing Trust Fund
Housing Trust.
as matching funds. But other than that, you're spot on.
All right, is everyone, we're together? Motion and second for the amendment. Would you like to hear it again?
Please.
Okay,
Just repeat.
one more time, if you
Sorry.
would.
Allocate $200,000 as matching funds from 2017 budget excess funds to Housing Trust Fund, provided a full and complete housing plan has been completed.
Approved by the council.
Approved by the
That's why we don't do amendments. All right. Yeah, well, that's good. That's good. Okay, we're together. We have that amendment. All those in favor of the amendment, vote yes. Opposed, vote no.
We have 5 yes, Hiller, Clear, Swartz, and Cohen voting no.
5 having voted yes, the amendment is approved. We are now back on the resolution as amended. Is there any further discussion on the resolution as amended? Yeah, Councilman Hiller.
Yes, do we need to, does there need to be an amendment about the other money now that this has been approved?
City Manager, I
No?
don't think,
You'll just figure it out?
trust me. All right, any other discussion on the resolution as amended? All those in favor vote yes, opposed vote no.
We have 8 yes, Ms. Clear voting no.
8 having voted yes, the resolution as amended passed. We go to item E, an ordinance.
E is an ordinance introduced by the Public Health and Safety Committee revising Title VI Animals of the City of Topeka Code.
Mr. City Manager. I'm sorry, this is back to the Public Health and Safety Committee. It's back, so if you want to introduce and then have anyone speak to it.
Thank you. So as you know, we brought this up for a vote several weeks ago and then delayed it so that everyone could consider Councilwoman Hiller's amendments. I've looked through them and I feel they add to the ordinance, so I would move to approve and ask her to, can't even think now. I would move to approve and ask you to offer your amendments, please.
Okay, so we'll have a motion to approve the ordinance, and then we'll go to the amendments. Is there a second to his, Councilman Hiller seconds? Okay, motion and second. We're ready for amendments.
Thank you, Mayor. You all did get sort of an explanatory version of these from the city attorney by email about a week ago, and then there was something emailed today. I am prepared to move them, although the city attorney has reviewed them and has said yes, no, and explanations. If people would like to have her go over them point by point, I would defer to the city attorney. Does anybody
Do you want to have them go over? Have you read them? Okay, we can, city attorney.
Each of you should have this little cover page that says item 6E. And so what I've done is outline the 8 amendments that Councilmember Hiller put forward, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, I guess. And I've outlined the line numbers and the page numbers where each of them are with a brief explanation. And those actual page numbers are attached with the notations in the margins. So the first would be to section 6.05.070B, and that would be inserting the words disease, comma, accumulation of flies, and in lines 475 to 476 on page 21. And staff's reviewed those and has no issue with those. Staff, including prosecution, animal control folks, TPD. The second revision would be to section 6.05.110, subsection A, and that would be deleting the word knowingly from line 809 on page 36, and staff has no objection to that. The third would be section 6.05.120B, and that's again deleting the word knowingly from line 837 on page 37. No objection from staff there. The next three are all to section 6.05.130B, and they're all on page 38. The first would be deletion of the words whose owner can be identified from line 860. The next would be insertion of the words or anyone who discovers a deceased domestic pet on a property between the words pet and contacts in line 862. And the third would be deletion of the words to the residents from line 863. And we had a fairly robust discussion with animal control on those, and they have no issues after that discussion. The seventh would be to section 6.15.170, subsection A1 and little double I. It would be inserting the words inhumanely between the words securely and muzzled in line 1134 on page 50. And the last would be to section 6.20.010, subsection D5. This would be deleting the subsection altogether. It's references carnivals as an exception to their prohibitions. And animal control took a look at that and concurred that that should come out. So they have no objection to that. That's in line 1322 on page 58. And those are the 8, I think, fairly minor, but we concur with all of them, revisions that were proposed a couple of weeks ago.
Are there any questions on the amendment or any of the partials
Thank you.
of it?
And as I think I mentioned before, except that I've been working already on the deceased animal ones, credit for all these others comes from offering them to some animal rights professionals who have done this before, and so I want to thank Midge Grinstead and Maureen Cummins for their input. And with that, I would move to approve the set of amendments.
Councilman Jensen seconds. We have a motion of an amendment as stated. Any discussion? All those in favor vote yes, opposed vote no. This is the amendment. These are the amendments that were offered. I'm going to clear the board. We vote again.
All right. Now you can go. We have 9 yes.
9 having voted yes, the amendments are approved, and now we have before us the ordinance as amended. Is there any discussion? We have a motion and a second for that earlier. Yes.
Clarification, we voted on an amendment 2 weeks ago. Did it come forward with that amendment on it?
That amendment failed, so the ordinance is now as originally offered with your amendments.
Okay.
All right. Any discussion on that? All those in favor vote yes, opposed vote no. Yes, I'm sorry.
You don't vote on this one, Mayor, right?
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Hiller?
Sorry.
We have 5 yes, Ortiz, Emerson, and Cohen voting no.
Okay, 5 having voted yes, the ordinance is approved. And we do want to comment the committee
Yes,
for
I want to thank
your
everyone who
years
spent the year working on this.
and a few hours involved. Okay, we go to item F, ordinance, the clerk would read.
F is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Brent Trout concerning utility rates amending City of Topeka Code Section 1305020 through 1305060 and repealing original sections.
Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Utilities Director Bob Sample made a presentation last week regarding the request for an increase in rates and the need for it. Tonight, we're asking for approval of this. A few comments and requests were made by council members regarding the rate increase. We've answered those, or we're prepared to answer those, and I'm going to, at this point, turn it over to Deputy Manager Gerber in order to present an update on those items.
Mr. Gerber.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Mr. City Manager, thank you. We started the meeting this evening, in a sense, by hearing the quarterly utilities report, and I think that was a great way to start this discussion. I also think it's worth celebrating in that, if you think back, even a year and a half ago, we weren't doing Public Works and Utilities quarterly updates, and so I think it's a wonderful thing in conjunction with Finance and now Planning that we're doing these updates to keep folks up to date with what's going on. I just think that was a good way to start off this discussion. The governing body heard a lot of information last week from Mr. Sample and his staff, and some of it could have gotten lost in the shuffle, so I just wanted to take probably 2 minutes and reiterate. I think I have a list of 7 things here that I think are worth reiterating to make sure we're all on the same page with. I'll start with the basics. Just to reiterate, what we are requesting is a 655 increase, 6% in 2018, 5% in 2019, and 5% in 2020. The need for these rates really has been articulated throughout the last year, really since the last time we did a rate increase. We sort of started this discussion, but we've done it through quarterly reports, the CIP that was adopted that contained the assumption of a rate increase, the budget process. You heard last time about some of the internal efficiencies that staff's focused on, because we don't think it's justified to come to you with a rate increase without demonstrating that we've in fact tried to make internal efficiency improvements to our operations. Those included better meter replacements, locate contracting, and the acceptance of additional high-strength waste at the Oakland plant, all of which have contributed to our bottom line and better operations. Our proposal includes an additional $100,000 towards utility bill payment assistance. Wanted to make sure that didn't get lost in the shuffle from last time. We have 2 programs, as the body knows. One of them is the franchise fee rebate, and one of them is our water share program. The funding could go obviously towards either one of those programs and could make an impact in either case, but wanted to make sure you understood that that included an additional $100,000 towards those programs. In the franchise fee one in particular last year, there were funds left over. There were not in the water share, so it may make sense, but we'd want to look at that more closely before we made that final decision. We did, of course, have numerous rate discussion meetings, one-on-ones with the governing body as requested, commercial and industrial users, and then a residential forum that we held at the Holiday Building on a Saturday morning. You saw comparison data between Topeka and other cities that showed, by and large, we are below the average without taking into account rate increases from those other cities. And then finally, I think it's worth reiterating that the last slide, if you remember from Bob's presentation, that showed the value of city water. I'll remind you, in case you've forgotten, 0.004 cents per gallon compared to the cup of coffee that some of us drink in the morning at $2, $3, $4, and more per gallon. As I was getting ready for this evening, I was looking back through my files from last time we did this, and I think most of you know I was involved with that, and the conclusion I made at the end of our last rate discussion I think is appropriate for this evening, and so if you don't mind, I'll read that from what I said last time, and that is, none of the solutions that we put forward have really put the city in the position of truly meeting our capital project funding needs, and this one still doesn't. Our city's system-wide infrastructure deficiencies developed over an extended period of time and cannot be solved overnight, similar to the discussion we've had about our roads and housing. I mean, it didn't just happen, so we have to be incremental in our solution. Nonetheless, we believe that the scenario we're putting forth continues to put us on an improved funding path while respecting the financial resources of all our rate classes and end users. And so with that, I would stand for questions or Bob and his staff would certainly be available for
Okay.
more detailed questions.
Are there questions? Deputy Mayor Cohen?
I think this may have been covered last week, but how much is raised each year by that increase?
Councilman, it is in your packet, but I'll read, because I don't know it off the top of my head, but in 2018, it would be about 1.87 million in additional water revenue, 1.64 in wastewater, and 400,000 in stormwater. Then in 19, it's additional 1.7 in water, 1.45 in wastewater, and 355 in stormwater. In 2020, 1.8 in water, 1.5 million in wastewater, and 373 in stormwater.
I would just like to thank Mayor, if I may, just like to point out the fact that we spent $200,000 a few minutes ago where we could have applied that to offset some of these increases in costs. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no other questions, we do have someone signed to speak in public comment, Patrick DeLapp. Okay.
Hi, I'm Patrick DeLapp. I'm here trying to tweak the codes we're going to be going over. And here's the problem. Here's a water bill I have recently at one of my properties. I used 450 gallons of water, but yet I was charged for 6,048 wastewater. A tremendous amount of water, that is. Right now, currently, they bill on two methods of how they come up with the wastewater usage. That is the average of December, January, and February, and they use that. Second way, if you haven't been in that house long enough, they do it by the area average. This is a small house, 435 square feet. No way. We got a huge problem for using that much wastewater. We've talked about affordable housing, things like this. At that rate, if somebody moved in after December, January, February, they'll be charged that whole other larger rate. That would cost them about $327 a year at that rate. Now, using the 450 gallons, which was really the usage of it, their rate would only be like $55 for the entire year for the wastewater treatment. What a difference. We want affordable housing. We're charging them over $275 additional than we should. I understand the contention of the December, January, and February. And that contention is, well, in the summertime, people are watering their grass, and that water is not being put in the sewer system. Well, fine. Well, 80% of the city is basically composed of NIAs, things like this. They're not real concerned about manicuring their lawn, keeping it look like a golf course. So they're not using this. So what I'd suggest we're doing is we tweak it. I did get resolution on this. I'm tenacious. I chewed my way up the system. The third level, I finally got satisfaction. And it ended up one-time waiver of that bill to adjustment. And I don't know the policy manual. It's an internal document. I wish it was online so I could understand it completely. But apparently that portion of the code was, or the policy manual is in there in case you have a water line break. You didn't catch it, water went all over the place, didn't go in the sewer system. Well, you shouldn't have to pay for it. Well, here's what I'm suggesting. Let's put something else in that code, and that is approximately line 67 on the proposed ordinance after that. And that, but the charge for the wastewater shall not exceed the amount used through the meter. I've got somebody moving in the house right now. They moved in just a few days ago. It's not a full month of December. What rate are they going to be charged? Are they not, can't count it now because she hasn't been there? I don't know. That's what I'd like council to do. It would be make it more fair and equitable, and we're concerned about affordable housing. Why charge them really more than the water they use? I stand for questioning.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you. Thank you. And I know the people will look at this situation and see if there's something that we can do to help in that situation. Okay?
If we could have a staff reaction to that, I've had people slammed with that many times and have walked through, which is expensive for citizens and for the staff, you know, the whys and whats and how can we fix it. And so if staff could maybe defend for us.
Do you
why it
have
has to be that
someone,
way.
Mr. Gerber, who would?
Mr. Mayor, Nicole Malott, who's the Business Services Manager for Utilities, can best address that question, I believe.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Good evening. The policy manual that he was referring to, we have several policies in place. We do the best to set the winter quarter average at the most advantageous rate to our residents, as well as reducing the amount of manual time it takes on the billing side, so it's most efficient as well. Because of that, there are situations where people do have higher wastewater averages established. We absolutely have the policies in place. In Mr. DeLapp's situation, we have a personal winter average that can be issued for that. If somebody does move in after that averaging period, at any point, they can call in and ask us to recalculate their personal winter average. We'll go in there, we'll look at it, we'll credit them back for those 3 months that we used to establish that average. It's really the most efficient way and the most economic or most advantageous way to our customers as well. There are several other adjustments that we have based on situations that come up, the personal winter average, having a vacant house. So when they're not using water at all, wastewater at all, we can absolutely take that down to 0, and then they're not charged for anything. It just takes a matter of them giving us a call, and we'll absolutely address it. I apologize that it took 3 levels for Mr. DeLapp to get to a resolution. It really should not have, and that's definitely something we can look at and address to make sure that it's a quicker resolution.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Gerber, you want to, any further comment?
Well, the only other thing I might add to that is, I mean, I think Mr. DeLapp presents a reasonable argument here, as Ms. Malott said, but we want to make sure that this isn't an anomaly, you know, that somehow this is month 1 of a larger cycle, and certainly seen that happen in our past as well, where water spikes from 450 gallons to a larger amount. And so we want to make sure we have a common policy in place that would address that with procedures that allow for us to look at these things on a case-by-case basis.
Okay. Other questions? I know Deputy Mayor Cohen had a question earlier. And we'll get.
Thank you, Mayor. In the presentation last week, we were talking about the average home's water consumption, and it was a certain gallon number. Do you guys know what that is? Just off the bat?
Mr. Mayor and Deputy Mayor, the number we use is 5,000 gallons for an average home.
Okay. And then the dollar amount that you estimate that it would go up would be how much based on that consumption usage?
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
The rate increase.
For the 3 utilities, it would be $4.10 a month in 2018.
Okay. I have to admit, I don't normally look at my water bill, so now that this came up, I did get it out. Our water consumption in our house with 2 adults and 2, both of them are almost teen girls, 5,250 gallons. And we pay $21.95 for that. So I'd say a $4 increase seems pretty reasonable.
Okay. Councilman Emerson, did you have a point? Councilman Jensen?
Thank you. Just a quick question. Can anybody tell me how old the software is we use to do all this? Is it fairly
Mr.
modern?
Mayor and Councilman, I can't tell you how old it is. I can tell you we have a major project going on right now, upgrading our utility billing
So,
system.
Newer software would be able to look and say, oh, well, if you've only used 450 gallons, therefore it's not realistic for you to use 6,000 for wastewater? Because I only bring this up because in the past, everyone has said, oh, well, you know, we can't do that because our technology isn't good enough. So I'm trying to establish that that's not a reason why we can't do what I would consider common sense things, right?
our technology is bad, but it's being upgraded.
Excellent.
Is there other discussion? We do not have a motion. Is there a Councilman Emerson?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve the ordinance. Deputy Mayor Cohen seconds. I have a motion and second to approve the ordinance on the utility rate increases. Any discussion? Councilman Jensen?
Thank you, Your Honor. I would amend this only to affect people that are above the poverty line, and that could be done easily with income verification. So if you come to the city once a year and show your income is below the federal poverty line, then you would not have to pay the increase.
Okay.
I have another question.
Is there a second? Okay, Councilman Clear seconds. City Manager? Yeah, I think we have to, gonna have to look into,
If I might, there are numerous ways the city already does income verification, so any of those mechanisms could easily be applied to this. Our technology after the upgrade should be good enough to be able to handle that, and then you only have to do it once a year instead of go stand in line and apply and hope there's funds and a whole bunch of other things. We could use the excess or the water share funds that would no longer be needed then to make up the difference.
go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, and the city attorney can probably speak to this as well, but we do have an ordinance that talks about, and I'm quoting from the ordinance, no, there shall not be discrimination among water, wastewater, or stormwater customers of like classes as to rates. So we actually have an ordinance that wouldn't allow something like that.
So how are you defining classes in that?
We would define, Mr. Councilman, we would define classes as residential, commercial, industrial, industrial 2, and...
So even though people can't afford something in an income class, you're intentionally discriminating against those folks that can't afford this?
I don't know if that's an answerable question.
And it may not be, but I find it very disheartening that we intentionally do that to people. But, I mean, if that's the ordinance, then that's something we can address in the future, but.
Yes.
There's been issues that are raised through the court system that raise equal protection concerns. So that is a concern that I think the body needs to be aware of when they're considering whether or not to amend in this way.
Councilwoman De La Isla?
Thank you, Mayor Wolgast. I think that the same heart that you have is what I think staff tried to create when we increase the amount of funds that we would have for individuals that are not able to afford their bill, then they can apply. And I think that the numbers were based on looking at how much money was requested and making sure that we could cover not only the money that we're having with the increase, but also making sure that we had additional funds to cover anybody else that applied.
And that's true, but that program is incredibly cumbersome to use and very inefficient. So, I mean, that's the feedback I've gotten from people out in the real world that are trying to access that, is it's a very difficult program to use. So, I'm happy to withdraw my motion if at some point there's an opportunity to correct that program, but it's not very effective.
Okay.
I love the idea, but it takes an awful lot of effort to apply, and, last year, we ran out of money in the water program. So, part of it is an awareness issue, I absolutely agree, but we've got to do something for some of these folks that just simply can't afford to buy water from us, and that's a serious issue, and it's very much out there.
Councilwoman De La Isla?
Thank you, Mayor Wolgast. Is there any way then that we could request from staff that the procedure is analyzed and evaluated and then brought back to the body so that we could publish it out to the community, how we're streamlining the process so that people that are in need don't have to jump through hoops to get the support?
That would be very appropriate.
Okay. Thank you.
And I think we did this within a year or two ago. We made a new effort to do a better job, and I'm sure we still have to, it's just something we have to work at. Deputy
One
Mayor
more
Cohen?
question, Mayor, thanks. Is this something that has to be done this calendar year? Or
Yeah.
is this, this is a utility rate increase. Is this something that maybe our new council needs to take on next year?
Well, I think this is it goes into effect in January of January 1, 2018. Isn't that correct?
Mr. Mayor and Deputy Mayor, the rationale behind putting it in front of this body, there was a lot of reasons for it. partly, as we've said many times, we've had this conversation all year, and so this is the body that's most familiar with it. And so we feel like it's your decision to make. Additionally, there are some mechanics that go into raising rates on the back end with our antiquated system. It takes a bit to get stuff put in, so the CIP that you adopted assumes rates for all of 2018. So the sooner we can get those in place, I think the better off we are.
Okay. Other discussion? We have the amendment. We have an amendment.
No, I withdrew that when
You
we
withdrew that?
yeah,
Okay,
decided
that
we
amendment's
were gonna-
been withdrawn.
yeah.
All right, so we have then before us the motion and second on the ordinance, the utility rate increases. Any discussion? All those in favor vote yes, opposed vote no. Hope that we got a message.
Okay.
We have 5 yes, Claire, Ortiz, Schwartz, and Cohen voting no.
5 having voted yes, the ordinance on this utility rate increases is passed. That completes,
No, 5-4.
I'm sorry,
5-4 is a fail.
you're correct. I'm sorry, it fails. We have to have 6 votes on all ordinances.
Well, then the other one failed too.
No, because the mayor doesn't have a vote. You mean on which one, the animals?
Yeah.
The excess funds?
Yes, it was a 5-4 as well. We just pulled the number.
Okay. All right. So that resolution, item D, resolution general fund reserve transfers did not pass.
It was a 5-4
It was
as
a
well.
5-4 vote, did not pass. And then the ordinance on the utility rate increases did not pass. All right? That completes
Yes, you have to.
our,
You'll need to go back and reconsider it.
we can reconsider tonight.
Yes.
Before, if the vote, and,
It has to be a member of the prevailing party, I
okay.
believe.
Shall we go back to the general fund reserve transfer? Item D. And, yeah, yes, your question?
If we don't transfer the money, what happens here if we don't approve any transfer of money here?
If not approved, it carries over into the fund balance, Councilmember.
Oh, simple enough, thank you.
No, it becomes, yeah, it's part of the fund balance, and it isn't. Mhm. We could take action on that in additional, couldn't be this motion, but excess funds, you can take action on them at other times.
Yes, you can reconsider, a motion to reconsider the matter that's adopted during the same meeting as the initial action can be reconsidered. It has to be an individual who's on the prevailing side that has to bring it up.
Okay, if we go to item D, resolution, general fund reserve transfers,
I'll have to read it again, and
okay?
It would be the 4, but
you have to wait for 6 months to reconsider unless the motion to reconsider the matter was adopted during the same meeting as the initial action. So it can go ahead. You don't have to be on the prevailing side in this situation.
Well, is there a motion to, it would be a motion to reconsider, if someone wishes to do so. That's
Reconsider
assuming that
the
someone is going to. vote-
Amendment.
Yeah. Someone is going to vote differently. Councilman Jensen?
So can I make that motion then?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yeah.
moved.
So you moving to reconsider the action taken on resolution for the general fund transfer, reserve transfers? Is there a second? Okay, Deputy Mayor Cohen seconds. Now, that would be, and it was amended, so we're looking at the motion as amended.
But now it'd be out of bid, right?
No, it'd be.
Yeah, it's all one now.
Vote on
It's
the
all-
motion.
it's all
This
one.
is a motion to reconsider the amendment that was made.
Okay,
This
so-
was a 5-4 vote. This is what you're reconsidering, is the 5-4 vote.
So right now, then, we need to vote to reconsider. And then if we have to have a motion to actually take action. Councilman Heller.
Point of clarification, okay, we need 6 votes to pass the ordinance. It's, wait a minute, D was a resolution,
No,
so,
But if you go back to the quorum, you have to have a quorum voting on it, and a quorum is 6. So 6 governing body meetings, or members of the governing body shall constitute quorum for the transaction of business.
Yeah, I
So
think
that
we
would
have to have
even
6 on
include the
everything.
amendments?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think so.
we have to have 6 on everything. Okay, we have a motion and a second to reconsider our action. Discussion?
Your Honor.
Yeah.
So could we start that by having you restate the motion,
Yeah,
just so
redo that.
it gets
State
everybody
the
back on the
amendment.
same page?
Okay.
To go back to the amendment.
Okay, Jensen made the motion, it was seconded by De La Isla, and the motion was to amend the resolution to allocate $200,000 as matching funds from the 2017 budget excess funds to a housing trust fund, provided a full and complete housing plan has been completed and approved by the governing body.
So my logic behind this is very simple. We've been talking about this for a year and a half, and at our level, there has not been a significant amount of action. Putting this in place begins the process to create that action. We're not actually moving any money around, we're simply earmarking money that we know will be there. With the addition of community partners and matching funds, something could happen. This also puts in place the process to develop a badly needed community plan for housing. There are a number of groups out there that we need to have come to the table and work on this solution. And most of us know that nothing really happens unless there's money behind it. What this does is create the possibility to put money behind it, to motivate these groups to come to the table and begin the process to solve this critical problem in our community. We're not actually asking to move the money tonight. We're basically creating the possibility to incentivize an action in the future. That's a bunch of fancy talk for, we got money, if you're willing to pony up and work with us, something might actually happen. So my encouragement to everyone is to create the possibility for housing in this community to get started. This is just the beginning process of actually creating the change that we all know we need. I'm not advocating for a continual transfer every year of excess funds. There needs to be a sustainable funding mechanism, and I wholeheartedly agree that that does not include excess funds. All this does is create the starting point so we can have a conversation, and for years we've tried to have a conversation, but without putting any kind of funding behind it, it's just not getting anywhere. My goal here is to drive that conversation.
Okay. Now, the motion before us is to reconsider. Then if we pass this motion, then we have a motion to approve.
Yes.
So this is a motion to reconsider. Any other discussion on whether or not we reconsider? All those in favor vote yes, opposed vote no.
We have 5 yes, Hiller, Clear, Schwartz, and Cohen voting no.
Actually, we could say 4 voting no, we do not have a majority, so there is no action. It is not reconsidered. Is there a motion to reconsider? The other one is item F, ordinance on the utility rate increases. Councilman Emerson?
Yes. I make that
He moves to reconsider that action. Is there a second?
You can do it at the initial meeting, if you do it at the same meeting.
Councilman Jensen seconds. Okay, this is again that we reconsider our action on the utility rate increases.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
If I may,
Yeah.
I've worked around here for 28 years on our a lot of the underground infrastructure, and I've said for a long time, if people could see what was under the ground, we would have had probably a half-cent sales tax for that instead of for streets. It's really bad, and I think utilities have done a fantastic job of putting bandages on bandages, and we've been a part of some repairs where they're literally just a couple feet away, they're putting another, we call it solid sleeve or wraparound sleeve on a water main. But we were teetering for several years on what they call a consent decree with the EPA. What I don't know is if we don't show that we're serious about funding the things that we've told KDHE and the EPA, I'm not certain, I'm not trying to be alarmist, but I just, I know that it is a concern. Once you do that, the EPA will come in and they don't care if rates go up $100 a month. It will fix it how they want it done. And you don't have, and please, if I'm saying anything wrong, please correct me, but that's my understanding.
Councilman, you're correct. We negotiated that with KDHE, and they're working on our behalf with EPA. But if, you know, as we've said throughout many of these presentations, if we don't get a rate increase approved, our CIP will go from $206 million to $83 million. That's a substantial, obviously we can all do that math. That's a substantial cut. And it would have the possibility to impact those kinds of programs, yes.
Well, I see this also similarly as our street issue, that we went years and years without putting additional money into the streets until finally we had to do a half-cent sales tax just to start getting back ahead. And I see the same type of situation here. If we're further behind, no one likes any increase in taxes. If we increase the sales tax in order to fix the streets, we have to increase here. Our costs go up. We can't always just keep absorbing them, and in order to keep rates the same, we have to increase them gradually rather than in a large amount at a time. And I'm afraid if we don't do it on a gradual basis, then we will at some point be ordered by EPA, as Kansas City, Missouri has, and then they tell you how much you have to raise the next year and what your rates will be, and that's it. So, Councilman Clare.
I have no doubt that this is needed, no doubt at all. However, I think it's too much. I think it should be gradual, but I think it's not gradual enough. And I've had a lot of calls that people just can't do this. They can't afford it. Thank you.
Councilman Hiller.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, as I look at the votes, I realize that 3 of the 4 no votes were people who were not on the council when we did this before. And we spent a lot of time over and over and over talking about the whys and where we were with this before. So perhaps that's made it a little easier for me because I've been prepared for this vote for 4 years, because we did it gradually the first time by only doing a small increment, and by really, the staff spent months and I don't know how many hours of meetings working with ratepayers at all levels to say, how can we rebalance this, which they did, and to have the industrial users pay a little bit more. And they notched that up in 2 pieces. I'm really thrilled that they went out and spoke to them again, but those users were prepared for this conversation, because doing too much too fast before for them, if I recall, was something that we said, all right, we will do it incrementally. So we already did the incremental first time, and we've known this was coming. Some of the discussion that we had before, for instance, was that we're just like cities all over the U.S. If you get on any of these listservs we have and look, our infrastructure is 100 years old or more, 150 years old. And when people built cities and did budgets for those first 100 years, all you did was plan for emergencies, a little repair, and a little growth. Nobody had the money in the budget to go back and replace your core system. And that's where we are. And so we just have to address that. And what's happened is the staff has worked more and more incrementally and affirmatively to address that. Meanwhile, when I first came on the council was also the year that the half-cent sales tax was passed. The mayor came on at the same time. Councilwoman Ortiz was here. And it was this, here we've got this big street program, and the citizens said, after the first year, are you nuts? Haven't you noticed that every time we do a street improvement, there's a water main break under it within 3 to 6 months after y'all get done your work? Why don't you take a little longer with these street projects and get those sewer lines, get water lines mostly is what's under the streets, and your storm sewer work done while you've already got the street open, so that we're not spending double time on an emergency basis to go back and patch. And by the second year, we as the city were doing that. And I'd asked Doug, he didn't have the reference with, nobody had time to go get the street names, I guess, just to see. But I think the only water main problem we've had with the construction project this year was 37th Street, East 37th Street. And that's phenomenal. I mean, we really went through it to where we were tearing up the street we just finished within a season. And so we didn't have as much discussion about those things before, but that's been very cost effective for us and progressive. And it's simply a matter of, again, I said a little earlier, I think about the property taxes. For me, I've known this was coming. I want to hold the line on everything as much as I can, but to make absolutely sure we didn't increase property taxes because we knew this had to happen and was coming. And I would encourage you to think about it that way. If it doesn't pass, we'll need to talk about it more. But again, we did take that soft first step the first time, and it's just good business. Thank you.
We have a motion and second to reconsider ordinance on city on Topeka utility rate increases. All those in favor vote yes, opposed vote no.
We have 6 yes, Claire, Ortiz, and Cohen voting no.
6 having voted yes. We are now reconsidering the ordinance. Is there any other legal aspect we need to do to read it again, or I don't know if that's necessary? Probably read it again. We'll start over.
An ordinance introduced by City Manager Brent Trout concerning utility rates, amending City of Topeka Code Section 1305020 through 060 and repealing original sections.
Okay, we have the motion. We have that ordinance before us. Your pleasure. You have to move to approve, and Councilman Emerson moves to approve, and Councilwoman DeLisla seconds to approve the ordinance on the Topeka utility rate increases. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor vote yes, opposed vote no.
We have 6 yes, Claire, Ortiz, and Cohen voting no.
6 having voted yes, the ordinance is approved. That completes our action items for this evening. We go to announcements. Mr. City, we have no meeting next week, so there is no preliminary agenda. Mr. City Manager, your announcements to you.
I have no announcements.
Councilman Emerson.
Yes, just a couple things. First of all, as Mr. Peak already alluded to earlier, California opened last Friday, which was good since I said it was going to open Friday. It was going to be in trouble if it didn't. And I just want to say, Schmidtline was the prime contractor. Hams did the asphalt. I believe Joe Conroy did the concrete. And Portland West was the construction manager and the inspector on it and designer. But I really like to say all of those people and Mr. Peak and Jeff Hunt. I can tell you I was there when that project started, July 5th of 2016. Yes. And there were a lot of things in the way, and Mr. Peak and Jeff Hunt came out, and we sat in a trailer, and there were a lot of raised voices talking about what was going to happen, and everybody worked together. Ultimately, they resequenced the project to enable to get done last year in this, and uniformly the comments I've gotten are it was a hassle to have closed for as long as it was, but it is fantastic now. It was worth the wait, and someone actually emailed me that today, but I've had so many phone calls saying that, so my hat's off to Public Works and Schmidtline Excavating for doing a great job over there. The second thing was, I don't know how many of you watched it, but Shawnee Heights, one of the school districts, the school itself's not in my district, but part of the district's in my district, and had two great volleyball players, Megan Cooney and Jazz Sweet, and they were both, I believe they're both named to the first team. They're both freshmen. They're both named to first team All Big, it's not Big 12, Big 10. And this past weekend, Jazz, who's a freshman there at Nebraska, was instrumental in her team winning the national championship. So a couple of fantastic girls and fantastic people. So congratulations.
Councilwoman De Lisla.
Thank you, Mayor Wargas. Pardon me. I would like to this is the last meeting of the year, and just wanted to wish everybody in the council happy Hanukkah for Councilwoman Schwartz, and happy Kwanzaa to those who celebrate Kwanzaa. Merry Christmas for those of us who celebrate Christmas, and, celebrations for all of you that have celebrations. For our families that are struggling, like the family of Dominique White that are here with us today, my heart is with you. I know that the season is always difficult, and not only to this family, but to all of the families in our community. I can tell you from being a person that's here in Topeka with just my kids and my family is people that are not bloodline, holidays can be really challenging. So again, just encouraging all of you to open your door to somebody, to give a hug to somebody that needs it, and just be vulnerable, because this is a hard season for some people.
Councilman Jensen.
Thank you, Your Honor. I hope everyone has a wonderful time with their family over the next couple of weeks. Please keep in mind the reason for all these seasons is not how much money you can spend on gifts. It's how do you help the person in need next to you? How do you give a hug to somebody who you may have no idea really needs it? I would also like to thank Councilwoman Elaine Schwartz, who has sat to my right since I got on the council, for your nudges and wisdom. I appreciate you putting up all of my terrible humor, and I wish you the very best. And to soon-to-be Mayor De La Isla, I want to thank you also for the exact same thing. I look forward to continue working with you, though now I will have to throw paper wads to get your attention. I'm really excited to start the next year, and I wish both of you the best in your new endeavors. Have a great week, everybody.
Councilman Schwartz.
Thank you, Your Honor. I plan to be in this to the very end. I know many council people in past years have not shown up for the last couple meetings, and I knew we were having very crucial votes tonight. And I appreciate all the help that I've received over the last almost 5 years now. But I wanted to say that there were some Shawnee Heights kids that were involved in this Iverson Award finalists. I sat next to my granddaughter, who's married to a young man that went to Shawnee Heights, and he got his degree. We have a lot to be proud of in Topeka. Washburn is one of our accomplishments in Topeka. They really put on a very good show for the graduates, and I wish all of them luck in their success. The other thing I wanted to mention is that I'm going to be involved in the St. Jude. It's a giveaway home that's being built and donated by the construction laborers, the construction companies that do this. So you'll probably be hearing a lot more about it, but they will be building it, and I think it will be open for tours in May, and then in June it will be raffled off for a raffle ticket. Someone gets a new house. So we have a lot of kids that have been affected in Topeka by cancer. I have been in touch with St. Jude's staff, asking them how many of our families have had kids with cancer that had help from St. Jude, and it's in the hundreds. I had no idea. So I think this is a cause that we can all get behind, because cancer affects kids, whether they're from the poor areas of town, the rich areas of town, wherever. We need to get behind this cause. So thank you.
Deputy Mayor Cohen.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilwoman Schwartz. It's very difficult following you after all the announcements. Just want to say Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Thank you. Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I wanted to thank the folks that came on the site selection team from UNESCO for the last 2 days, and everyone from here in Topeka that was involved in meeting with them. It's always fascinating. It's just a lot of hard work to host that kind of a visit, but it's also fascinating to watch your city through somebody else's eyes. They were here particularly to look at Sumner and Monroe schools as prospective prospective sites as part of a serial nomination to the United Nations UNESCO program as Global World Heritage Sites. And just to be on that list and to realize that what happened here in Sumner and Monroe and in Topeka and all the things we did was worthy of a look. We were really looked at as a keystone in the civil rights movement. Still, we've got work to do to be a UNESCO caliber city. At the same time, though, they were just agog with the neighborhood involvement, with the schools. We had Deputy Mayor De La Isla joined briefly this morning. They saw the courthouse. They saw both buildings. They were eager to see the Capitol. We had all sorts of representatives. I think Bill Fyander was representing planning and landmarks. The state tourism folks were out. So we put on a good show, and they were eager to see more. So thanks to everybody who was involved and who supported those movements for both those buildings so far. Second, just at the end of the year, I wanted to thank not only my colleagues here, but the staff, all of you, for all the things that have happened this year. It has been a good year. We've accomplished a lot. Similar to Councilman Emerson, I guess what pops to mind first is how nice it is to drive on Topeka Boulevard from 7th to 11th, and on West 10th Street from Gage to Fairlawn, which is just awesome, as well as how much Clay Street means to historic Old Town and really to our whole city. Also, and I could be breaking news here that somebody's saving, but it's my understanding that TPAC, one of our transient guest tax grantees, did hit their fundraising goal to earn their match, and I'm really proud they worked hard at that, and so that's pretty exciting. Finally, I wanted to echo the holiday wishes to everyone as well, to encourage everybody to enjoy the family and friends that you're with, and for those that are hurting, as Mayor-elect De La Isla said, hopefully there's somebody there not to be afraid to reach out, and also to think of those lost loved ones or ones that are missing and not here, and instead of just feeling sad, to engage in an activity that would make them happy. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you for your leadership with Sumner School. Very good. Councilwoman Claire.
I had the honor to attend the Love 146 training, and it's a human trafficking curriculum that we can go out and now I can teach in schools or teach to people who are interested in that. And that will be one of my focuses now that I have retired as of today from teaching.
Hey.
I'm sure you all heard some yelling at 3:30. That was me. I just want to wish everyone a happy and safe holiday.
Okay. Councilwoman Ortiz, nothing today. Well, that completes our announcements for this evening. We'll take a 10-minute break, and then we'll start our public comment.